Let's talk more now on matters affecting traditional leadership in the country, coming out, of course, of the conclusion of the 2025 Traditional Leaders Imbizo, the National House of Traditional Leaders, as well as Khoi-San Leaders, were meeting and discussed some key issues. We're joined now by the Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Minister Velenkosini Hlabisa to shed more light on that. Minister, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. I know this question of remuneration or support to the traditional leaders, as well as other matters, would have been discussed. We'll round back to that. But let's start here. I mean, what was quite prominent, at least in the chairperson's closing remarks, was the question of collaboration, be it collaboration with the mining sector, the collaboration with the farming organizations around issues of stock theft, and so on and so forth. That needs to be solidified. How are you planning to do that? What's the recommendation in as far as strengthening those collaborations?
Thank you very much. And good evening to the viewers of Newzroom Afrika. Let me, for record purposes, I was part of the Imbizo on day one from midday, and day two also from the midday. Today I was at Salka in Durban. I could not be part of the closing day, but I am aware that the schedule for today was to engage key stakeholders. As you made reference, the issue that affects traditional communities, the issue of stock theft, the issue of rural development were the issues that were going to be discussed today. Cogta, as a cooperative governance, is going to be instrumental, especially on rural development. When I was making my remarks in the urban forum today, I said, in order to manage urbanization or the urban migration, we need to decentralize the economy to rural areas in order to drive people back to our communities where they come from. This will prevent the urban migration, because what makes people to move from rural to informal settlement around urban areas is a desire for a better life, the look for a job, the desire for better roads and all infrastructure in close proximity, which is not there in rural areas. So now, the resolution of Imbizo today, that plans must be in place to drive rural development. This is what is going to make people see no need of leaving their homes in rural or traditional communities if the economy is decentralized, if more money is given to municipalities, the previously disadvantaged, in order to invest in infrastructure, good roads, not better roads, but good roads as similar as those roads in urban areas. The DDM model, working together, the national government, provincial government, and municipalities, they must work together to invest in the rural communities, in traditional communities, in order to drive the economy towards the development of these areas. And this will therefore make the stability in terms of human settlement in the rural areas.
Yeah.
As Cogta, we are the coordinator of district development model, and we are going to drive this idea to all district development champions, that let us drive the economy to rural areas.
As coordinators, how are you going to ensure then that traditional leaders are incorporated in the planning, not only in the planning, but also in the implementation of these service delivery programs? good roads, infrastructure, water, electricity, and so on. I think one of the other issues, for example, they're saying funding agencies must make sure that there's infrastructure available in rural areas so that people in rural areas can be able to access those services.
And the review of the white paper on local government, which is going to be concluded in March next year, must come out with a clear recommendation of ensuring that traditional leaders are not spectators at a local government sphere, but they are active participants with full participation and decision-making so that they influence the resources to go to traditional communities. Secondly, it must be a government's intention, not accidental, that capital projects are earmarked and driven to traditional and rural communities to advance development, to make the environment conducive for investors. If roads are good, water is available, the investors will be keen to go to these areas to invest and ensure that there is a decentralization of economy in our country.
Yeah. Is that a commitment that you are making as government, your intentionality? And how are you going to express that commitment in real terms so that it's not just a platitude that you're saying because we come out of the Imbizo and it's a nice thing to say?
We have a good working relationship with the National House, with the Forum of the Majesties in South Africa, and as Cogta. The relationship that exists between us and the traditional institution, we are going to work together. There is one thing I liked yesterday. The National House invited all political parties, the main ones, ANC, IFP, EFF, MKP, and Action SA. All these political parties, they committed themselves to champion the roles, functions, and responsibilities of traditional leaders to be addressed in the Constitution of South Africa, Chapter 12. And I am going to climb on the commitments they made yesterday because people who came to speak are members of parliament, and they committed that the cause of our traditional leaders and the Khoi-San, which has been a cry since 1994, the land issue, Thabo, is a serious issue amongst traditional leaders. Chapter 12 of the Constitution that stripped all the roles, responsibilities, is an issue among traditional leaders, and these political parties committed. And as Cogta, therefore, I made a commitment also to the Imbizo that since political parties predominantly from African societies have committed that they will be working hand in hand with the National House, and as Cogta, I will see to it that we keep the promise and commitment we made to our leaders yesterday.
Right. Now, let's come back to this issue of remuneration and support. I mean, it's an issue that I'm sure as long as you've been in Parliament, you would know has been there and has been discussed back and forth from the traditional leaders' perspective in different provinces. Let's begin in KZN. You're quite a prominent figure in KwaZulu-Natal. You're the leader of the IFP. Did the matter of a campaign donation of 10 Rand for His Majesty come to your table? Was it ever tabled with you?
No, I just only read about it in the social media. And while I may not want to speak on behalf of the king, because I'm not authorized to do so, but I saw that Prince Thulan Zulu distanced himself from it on behalf of the king, and I do not think it could be a good idea to do such an activity, because the question of management will be a difficult question, right, and it might eventually attract the mishandling of such donations if you are not sure how many people are going to donate this month, how many will quit next month. It's going to be a problem area. I think the Zulu monarch is catered for in terms of the KwaZulu-Natal government. It cannot be a good thing to do. I'm speaking as an individual.
Right.
The IFP has not expressed its view, but as a Zulu person, I think we will need to be very careful not to fall into this trap.
Yeah, but as a head of government for Cogta now, I mean, what Prince Zulu there would have raised is that maybe some of the subjects of the king, His Majesty, would have seen shortages of certain things that should be done in the kingdom. As far as your purview where you are as minister, how well are the provincial grants handled, especially, let's talk about KZN in terms of what the requirements are for the kingdom?
Thabo, let me start with, if there are subjects of the king who feel there are things that are not catered for well, I would encourage individual donation by a person and going to the king, other than a monthly 10 rand donation, because this one will create a problem. But if Hlabisa feels I must go and donate to my king, must do so as an individual, as people are doing to Amakosi and all other kings. When it comes to the needs of the Zulu kingdom, amongst the kings in South Africa, the Zulu king is better catered for because it is catered through legislation in KwaZulu government that regulate how the king is supported, which is not the case with other majesties in South Africa. Of course, we must give credit to Umntwana kaPhindangene because he's the one who did this. You know, Thabo, if you go to other majesties, the royal palaces are not as what you see in KwaZulu kingdom.
Indeed.
The roads to the palaces in KwaZulu are blacktop, they are tarred. It's unlike when you go to other provinces. So now, if I talk about how better cared the king of the Zulu nation, the king is better taken care of compared to other provinces. But what we have done as Cogta, last year, when we launched the Forum of South Africa's Majesties, we had a meeting with Minister of Finance where we eventually agreed that at a national government level, there must be a budget allocation for the upkeep of the palaces of the majesties in South Africa. This will not include the king of the Zulu nation because this is already catered for within the government of KwaZulu-Natal, which is not the case with other provinces. Of course, there are items that will be taken care of when it comes to the king of the Zulu nation, which has not much to do with the palaces, because for this case, KwaZulu has a clear position of how the palaces are looked after by the provincial government, yet in other provinces, that is not the case because it is the competence of the national government. For all the past years, there was no allocation dedicated to the upkeep except from to begin this year.
So those are those the only reforms that you have brought in as far as the upkeep is concerned? Are there other reforms in as far as remuneration is concerned of the kings and chiefs that you are bringing in?
Thabo, the issue of the remuneration, I reported in the Imbizo yesterday that the commission that was dealing with the remuneration completed its task and submitted the recommendations to the president, because it's a matter that we are following since last year. The president looked at the recommendations. There were gaps which the president identified and took the report back to the commission and gave them up to the end of September to finalize the final recommendations. And then from October 1, it will be in the table of the president to make his final word in terms of approving the recommendations as they are, or to make some adjustments. And then I committed to the National House of Traditional and Khoi-San Leaders and their majesties that on 1 November, I will hold a meeting to give a feedback on the progress in relation to the remuneration. There is another matter, Thabo, the handbook that deals with tools of trade, cell phones, working tools, vehicles. The handbook has been agreed to by 9 provinces, and they are costing it as we speak in terms of what will be the financial implication if you provide vehicles for all Amakosi in all provinces in South Africa. And we are waiting the feedback from the provinces so that we take this process forward. You see, Thabo, Amakosi and their majesties, somehow there are things that have not been done for over the past years. And we are a continuation. I wouldn't want to say we are coming with better things, but we are a continuation. And we gave commitment that last year, when we took over the department, we noted all their long outstanding concerns and we are addressing them. This includes the issue of safety and security. As you know, the killing of traditional leaders is a disaster. It is at a stage of a crisis. And the deputy president has engaged on the matter, and the Minister of Police is engaged on the matter. They have agreed, I reported yesterday, that at any time they are ready to offer the safety services to our traditional leaders. The only area that must be finalized with the Minister of Finance and Minister of Police is the funding. Because if you take police, they can't use the budget for police to provide protection services to our traditional leaders. One other change that we brought this year in March, we launched the Council of the Queens of South Africa, the spouses to our kings. Now we have a formally constituted council, whereas the queens, the spouses to our kings, they have a forum, a platform where they engage as to how they support their majesties and also express the women's view in as far as our kingdoms are concerned in South Africa.
Minister, we appreciate your time and thank you very much for coming on this evening and highlighting some of those issues and recommendations coming out of the 2025 Traditional Leaders Imbizo. That's Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Minister Velenkosini Hlabisa.